Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lessons Learned, UK Sailmakers conversations between sailors talking about sailing so we can all be entertained and learn a little bit more. I'm Buttons Padin, and today I have David Dickson on Zoom with me from Athlone, Ireland. We're going to be talking about the Shannon One Designs. Hello, David. Welcome to Lessons Learned.
Hello, Buttons. How are you?
Just great, thank you. We're going to be talking about the Shannon One Design class, which is a local class with a great history in David's area. And UK Sailmakers has done some interesting work in terms of developing new sails for it, which have proved quite effective so far. But David, tell us a little bit about where you are, the sailing that's done in Athlone, and the Shannon, the background of the Shannon.
The background of the Shannon is interesting. It was a boat that was designed in 1922. It came about because the Shannon River needs boats that are kind of unique. There was an 18-foot class originally, but it was very much an open design. And to standardize it, they switched to a one design by Morgan Giles. And that was the birth of the Shannon One Design class.
How are the boats rigged?
The boat's a single sail, low aspect ratio sail with gaff rig. So it makes quite interesting challenges because the sail is tied onto the spars. The spars are wooden and the sails are actually physically tied onto them. So there's a lot of setting up in it. And because it's a yard, nothing is straight along the luff, which makes it very interesting.
The hulls are lap streak, correct?
What we call a clinker construction, yes. So it's a traditional design, which we've got a steel centerboard as well. It's made of quarter-inch plate.
And
plate.
Are the boats that you're sailing currently, are they vintage boats or are they modern versions of a traditional design?
We have a little bit of everything in the class. There hasn't been a boat completed for about 15 years, but there is 2 boats in construction at the moment. But we also have boats dating right back to 1922, the original boats, and they're still competitive, which is good. It's a good class from that point of view because the old boats compete on an equal basis to the new boats. My own boat, personal boat, fits somewhere in the middle. My boat would have been designed and built in 1962 or thereabouts.
That's a vintage boat by many people's calculations.
Well, my boat's also been rebuilt twice in that period of time as well.
So David, tell me a little bit about how you sail the boats and their characteristics.
The boats are sailed with a crew of 3. They power up reasonably quickly. They're relatively light. They're quite narrow. They cut through the water quite quickly. They have a long waterline length, but for 18 feet long.
Are they weight sensitive because you've got 3 people on the boat?
They are weight sensitive, and there's quite a big variation in the weight of the hulls. And what we're learning now is that the weight of the hulls is becoming more and more critical with time. We certainly, with the lighter boats and the lighter crews, we get up on a plane much quicker than some of the heavier boats with the heavy crews.
So you can get up on a plane quickly. I would not have thought that in a boat with a low aspect rig.
I think we might be overstating it. It takes a lot of wind to get them on a plane.
For years, the Shannon One Design sails have been manufactured by a local loft there, who is apparently retiring. How did you get to UK Sailmakers to build your sails?
It started with a telephone conversation right back in 2022. And we had a good conversation. And Barry talked to the original sailmaker, Watson Sails, and they cooperated a little bit on it, and they shared a little bit on the way around the designs and how the boats sail. And Barry came up with this new design, which from my point of view is working extremely well.
Did you get involved in the actual design of the sails, or was it just done on your behalf?
Well, I had a few things that I felt were important in the sails, and they were added in, and the sail design was developed from that. So I would have been involved in the design process. Barry would have shared the computer images with me, and I would have gone through those with him.
What were those tweaks that you were asking Barry for?
Mainly to do with sail shape and where the fullness was at its maximum and things like that. Because we're tying onto a gaff rig that's not particularly straight, it throws up some more interesting difficulties with the sail design.
It's probably not the same cut design as you would have for the Marconi rig, I would assume.
No, well, you see, the computer models want to work off nice straight lines and masts that bend with nice even curves. Shannon One Design is not like that because everything is tapered, and the gaffs are actually tapered in two directions. Both ends are tapered, so it throws up all sorts of twists and turns.
The sail has a unique shape, as you're saying, and you're telling me that the gaff is tapered at both ends. So probably nothing is a straight line like the computers are used to designing to. But what controls do you have on the sail?
Basically, we were able to use a downhaul on the tack, and we have an adjustable outhaul as well. And after that, it's a standard kicking strap.
Okay.
And those are the basic controls. So it's from a control point of view. From a control point of view, it's very basic.
Where else are they sailing Shannon One Designs?
The Shannon One Designs are sailed in two clubs in Ireland, Loughree Yacht Club and Lough Yacht Club. Both clubs are on the River Shannon. They're about 100 miles apart. But a lot of the members that sail on the boats would travel down from Dublin, which is more or less equidistant from the two clubs, but not as the crow flies.
Before the design work, did Barry get out and sail the boats with you and learn about them all?
Barry did a little bit of sailing with us in the boats, not much. He picked most of it up from talking around people. And Barry has a very good knowledge of sails and sail designs. He knows of the classes more than he knows it intimately. So this is quite an eye-opener for him. But we did the basic design work in 2022. But then in 2023, he made up a prototype sail for us. And I used that for the season. The prototype sail was quite good. Wasn't quite the finished article. There was a few things that weren't quite right on it, but fundamentally it was okay. So I got permission from the class to use this prototype sail in effectively the national championships. And I used it for the year. We didn't win the championships, partially because I just finished a rebuild on my own boat. There was an awful lot happening at the one time, but it was good enough that people could see what was happening on it.
What kind of sail material did they use in building these sails?
Basically, it's a traditional Dacron sailcloth. We need a sail that can take up the flexibility that's given by the spars. The spars are quite flexible on a Shannon One Design. The boom is quite long and quite narrow and bends a lot, and the same with the gaff. So everything is very flexible, and you have to be able to pull and push and pull the sail to get the sail shape you really want on it. It just doesn't hang there like it would do on a more modern rig.
And you say they power up pretty quickly too, so I guess that makes a difference where you need a little bit of give so you can depower.
Yes, you have to be able to depower them. We found upwind this year that we were sailing with the rig with the main sheet in very tight and powering quite high and close to the wind, even in the rougher seas that the lakes would throw up. Rough is relative because it's a lake, and it's a relatively small lake by American standards.
No, but it can still get choppy, I'm sure.
Yes.
What other types of boats are sailed in your area?
The main class on the Shannon is the Shannon One Design. There is some small cruiser racing done. There would be some laser sailing, and there's a mix of other classes as well. Our children normally start in Optimists, move to Mirrors and 420s. And then hopefully we pull them into the Shannon One Designs, but very often they would be going to university in Dublin, and they would go and sail in Dublin or sail somewhere else.
One of the things that we've learned, growing up in boats is as a kid, you want to get on somebody's boat and be part of a regular crew, and then you can learn the boat, and then all of a sudden you become the skipper and you bring along a young person. So it sounds like that's what you're doing there too.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. A lot of the boats are in the families for years. The boats get handed from father to son or daughter and go down the generations. Some of the boats will be on their third or fourth generation. But there's also quite a few new people who come into the class as well. Even though I'm sailing the Shannon One Designs for 35 years, I still classed as a blow-in.
So David, when you were shifting over to UK Sailmakers to build the sails for the Shannon One Design, what was the process in terms of different versions of the sail, different input that you had?
Well, Barry's expertise was good, and the first prototype we made up, we had a sail that was pretty close to a final design. So we took that sail shape, we sailed with it for a season, and then we moved on from that and we made a finished design, of which Barry has now sold 15 sails. We're a small class, so 15 sails is a big input.
I'm intrigued by the difference of designing a sail that curves on the top like you're talking about there, rather than just a straight mast. I'm the northeast of the United States. We have the S-class boat, which was Hairsoft's first Marconi rig. And so we could have a larger roach. The mast actually has a hook in it. And designing for the S boat is different than just designing for an Etchells or a Viper or something like that, where the rig is straight. You can bend the rig, but going in, there's a curvature that you have to design for.
I think it's simpler on the Shannon One Design than that. Basically, the mast is straight and just bends a little bit more on the top than normal. So you're just a matter of pulling the fullness around a little bit, pulling it a little bit further forward than you would normally for a single sail boat. But it's quite straightforward, really.
And when you trim the main in, do you get a lot of bend out of the grip, or does it stay pretty straight?
Everything bends on a Shannon One Design, including the hulls. So it's normal for everything. These are a very soft boat from that point of view. All the rigs are flexible. One of the problems we have is to get spars that are consistent and stiff.
What are the spars made out of?
Spars are normally sort of normal white deal. Sometimes we're using Douglas fir, sometimes other timbers, but there's a huge variation in the timbers. Makes quite a big difference to the way the sail's set, as you can well expect. So if you're sailing with a very heavy crew, you need as stiff a spars as you can get, because you need to power up the rigs as much as you can. Part of the problems is with the very big crews, actually destroying the boats as well, because of the weight that's been put into them.
Well, do you have different masts for different conditions, or just you go with what you have?
We're not that sophisticated. I have a selection of masts, but it's basically one mast that I'm using at the moment. I've experimented with different masts, and I'm coming back to the same mast all the time at the moment.
Is it because it's stiffer or more flexible?
It's because it's stiffer. It's an oldish mast I have, and it seems to work for me, so I'm sticking with it. A little bit stiffer, but it seems to be holding in there. So I have tried flexible masts on it in the past, didn't go.
So David, you said that you had your prototype sail that you worked on with Barry, and that he moved it ahead in terms of the second generation is what he's gone into manufacturing for. How did you find the service and the working relationship with UK Sailmakers?
Barry is really easy to work with and very helpful. He came up to Athlone and he did a training session with everybody. He also listened to all the comments we had about the prototype sail. We set up a WhatsApp group for everybody to have input into it, so he could listen and he could get a feel for what everybody was thinking about the sails. And Barry has done training sessions with us. It's part of the service, if you like.
David, you said that you're somewhat in the middle of the country, and Barry Hayes is at the UK loft over in Cork. That's about 150 miles. Does he come over to check in with you all the time?
Well, he wouldn't check on us all the time, but he would keep in close contact with us. He's interested to make sure the sails are being used and they're being used properly. And he's looking towards the future about what will happen next year and the year after. So it's very important for him that he's got his foot in the door and he's talking to people and people are talking to him. I think that sums it up well.
Is there another generation of sails coming along, do you think?
That's a good question. Everybody wants to sail One Design boats with One Design sails, but these aren't One Design boats. So I imagine there will be more designs and design tweaks to come in the future, but I think it'll be a few years away at this point. The Shannon One Design class has had about 150 boats made. About 100 of them are still viable boats, and there's a lot of them over 100 years have disappeared. And we would have around 70 that would be just about in racing condition. Some of them would be well sailed and very well maintained. So there's a huge variety and standard of boats. But even some of the very old boats that are in bad condition can be brought back right back up to racing standard quite quickly. A lot of the boats would have been rebuilt just to stiffen them up and to make them better, make a better boat out of it at the end of the day. But the class is quite strong.
How often do you race?
Because we've got members coming from Dublin and places like that, we tend to sail every sort of second weekend for the weekend. A lot of people would have houseboats in and around the club, and they would use the Shannon quite a lot. So Wednesday night sailing doesn't really work for a lot of people. So it tends to be focused more on the weekends. Typically, Shannon One Design class is one of the biggest classes in the country from turnouts at a national championship. This year we had about 35 boats at our national championship. This would rank us probably third or fourth behind lasers and boats like that.
How did you do at the Nationals?
I lost out quite badly in one sense because I finished fourth, which is not a nice place to be, but I was 1 point behind the winner. There was a tie break for first and second, and there was a tie break from third and fourth. And I missed it all. The Shannon One Design is basically raced for 2 regattas in the year, 2 main regattas in the year. Both are a week long. And they're both sort of holiday regattas for a lot of people. But we won the second one in Lough quite comfortably.
That's terrific. Congratulations. David, thanks for joining us for another episode of UK Sailmakers Lessons Learned. All of you out there can access the full Lessons Learned library in the how-to section of uksailmakers.com. Episodes are also available on our streaming channel, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. David Dickson, thank you very much for your time and your knowledge and sharing about the Shannon One Design. And for UK Sailmakers, I'm Buttons Padin, and I hope these lessons learned will help you sail with confidence.
Thank you very much, Buttons.